Hey, what's up and welcome to another Season Gaming Hardware Review. My name is Eric, I go by GamePositive on the internet, and today we are looking at the Victrix Gaming Pro Controller for the Xbox. There are quite a few brands in the gaming peripheral business, and most of them have been around for a very long time. This is why it's always so intriguing when a new player enters the game, and it's because of that I was so excited to check out this new controller from one of the newest faces of the esports scene in Victrix. Victrix is based in San Diego, California, and in 2015 they started designing video game accessories that targeted esports professionals, streamers, and core gamers alike. They claim the inspiration for their products come from countless hours of talking to professional gamers about their equipment, asking them about the pros and cons of the current state of gear on the market. A lot of this really shows, as some of the features they chose to focus on with this controller in particular really point towards what's important to the core gaming audience, where less functional things like RGB lighting, for example, are actually absent from the spec sheet, and also absent from the price tag, as these are coming in at only $99 US. Well, now that you're up to speed on Victrix, let's take a look inside the box. So first things first, the packaging here is actually quite nice. You can see here they have some branding talking about this being a dual core controller and having Dolby Atmos support, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But let's first open this up and take a look at what's inside. Slide this off here. And first thing you see is that it actually ships with a very nice hard shell case. This is something that is seeming to be more rare and rare as time goes on, as some of the newer entries from Razer, for example, even the higher end ones that cost a lot more than this, actually do not have the case coming with them anymore. And if you're going to be bringing this from tournament to tournament or from friend's house to friend's house, LAN party to LAN party, having a case like this is a very awesome thing. And it shows once again that Victrix is really focusing here on the functional things that really pro gamers or the target audience for this are going to be looking for. So let's open up the case here and see what is inside. So first thing you'll notice is they have a kind of a unique colorway here with the white and purple, very kind of Twitch.com, if you know what I mean. And also here you'll notice that there are multiple faceplates, which we'll talk about in a minute there. Up here we have the braided USB-C cable, which is again matching the purple colorway, which is really nice. One thing I'll point out is that it is a recessed port here, and this is a very thick end, and it actually goes together quite nice. You can see that it is extremely flush here, which provides a really nice aesthetic up here. Something that most people don't care about, but I kind of really enjoyed that. So move this out of the way here and take a look at the controller proper. So it is laid out exactly the same as you'd expect an Xbox controller to be, with the offset analog sticks. You may notice here that the D-pad is quite different. There are actually two different D-pads you can choose from, and this one is personally my favorite. I feel like the wide surface area is really nice, and just the actuation process of this was really good. I actually think this is one of my favorite D-pad layouts I've seen in quite some time. And you also have the audio button here, which will control your microphone mute, and holding this will allow you to increase and decrease your volume and control your game and chat balance, which is really nice. I always love seeing that in a controller. Face buttons are pretty bog standard. They are a bit smaller than the standard stock controller, but they do a good job. They sound and feel pretty much identical. And of course you have these oversized share, menu, and pause buttons. There's also some grips here, which you'll see on the grip on the front here instead of the back. A lot of controllers will put grips back here. But when you are using a Pro controller, a lot of times your fingers are on buttons back here, so the majority of the actual grip that's happening is going to actually happen on the front. That's something that their engineers thought about, and thankful for that, because a lot of times having the grip on the back here, it is nice, feels nice when you first pick up the hand or pick up the controller, but doesn't really make a difference when you're playing, as the majority of your grip, like I said, is going to be at the front here while you have your fingers on these buttons back here. Now, let's take a look at some of the more unique features here, starting with the removable faceplate. And that's actually going to bring me into one of my first kind of issues with this controller, is that if you do opt for this D-pad, which I did say is my favorite one, you can't actually remove the faceplate until you remove the D-pad, because it kind of goes over the cutout here. This is a good chance to show you the other D-pad, which is a much more traditional one, and this one actually has etchings on here, which will show you the different ways that you can adjust your sound profile and stuff like that, which is nice. However, once the D-pad is swapped out, you can easily just pop this off because it is only attached by magnets, and the process is actually quite simple. Now, you might think that these two faceplates, the difference is just kind of a cosmetic thing, but they actually have their own functional advantages, which I'll talk about now. So this one, as you can see, is more of a flexible rubber finish, which actually provides a little bit more grip, in my opinion. It's not a kind of a feeling that I'm used to on a controller. I can't think of any other controllers that kind of feel like this. It really just feels like a silicone phone case almost, but it gives you a little bit of a smoother grip, and it's a grip that I actually prefer. But the real functional advantage of this actually comes in the thumbstick gates, where the gates are actually rubberized instead of being plastic. You are going to get a little bit more resistance here, natural resistance, which is going to make aiming a little bit smoother. Third-party companies like Control Freaks will sell you precision rings that you can attach onto any thumbstick to make other controllers feel similar to this, but it's nice to have this kind of caked into the controller itself without having to rely on third parties. Now again, you can just easily remove these, which is really convenient, and this one here actually has a pretty unique functional advantage, aside from it just being a white colorway instead of purple, and that actually comes down to the gates as well. These black gates can actually be popped off pretty easily, and you can see here in the case provided is 2 additional gates, and these ones are actually octagonal gates. So they snap on just like this, and they're going to provide you with that Nintendo 64 GameCube style octagonal gate, or fight stick style, because that's kind of what they're intended for. Having these angled octagonal gates is going to make it a lot easier to pull off some maneuvers in fighting games, which is what they're meant for, and replacing them is very easy. Like I said, they just snap right in and you're good to go. So again, they offer 2 different color options for the faceplates, but each faceplate is different and offers functional advantages as well. Again, they're thinking of things that gamers are really going to need functionally, not simply just looking at different aesthetics here, which I really like to see. And some of the other accessories that we have in the case here, I'll just quickly remove the faceplate once again, is these extra thumbsticks. Now you have 2 different options you can choose here. This one is elongated and has a crosshair on the thumbstick, which is to signify that it should be going on your right stick to help with aiming. I personally kind of stuck with these for the most part, but a lot of people do like to have this elongated stick to help improve their accuracy. Removing the thumbsticks is quite easy. They just kind of pull off. You can set them right back into the case, and you see that there is a hole that's in a particular shape on the bottom here, which just matches up with the shape of this prong here, and you simply just attach it like this. And there you go. They just line up and snap right in. The D-pad I find is a little bit easier to flip between the 2, but it really isn't that big of a deal to replace the thumbsticks here. Now I'll just slap this back on so it feels a little bit more natural in my hands, and we'll go over the final accessory here, which is the backplate. Now I have this backplate installed already. This is my preferred one. It has a button on either side, and again, this is my favorite style, as when I hold the controller, my fingers naturally rest in this position, so I'm ready to go to hit these buttons. However, if you flip this switch here, this will actually pop out, and you can attach the additional backplate, which will turn that single button on either side into 2 buttons on either side. This is probably my biggest complaint with the controller, as yes, my fingers kind of align here like this, and I maybe can get used to this over time, but because these 2 buttons are slightly different, where the curvation here happens at a different point, and more importantly, the length of these buttons are different. The longer the button is, the easier it's going to be to press, because you're just bending a plastic piece, where this one is shorter, it's a lot more stiff, and I found it pretty hard to kind of accurately decipher between the 2 buttons with my 2 fingers, as well as it's more difficult to press the top button than the bottom button, which kind of threw me off. I imagine perhaps if I did more play testing, although I did spend probably about 20 hours with this controller, maybe I can get more used to it, but to be honest, I just opted for the one that has just a single button on either side, because I found that to be a lot easier to press there. And They just simply snap into place right there. Very, very easy. You may be wondering what these two purple switches are. Those are actually to control the trigger stops here. Looking at the triggers themselves, they are very wide, which I really like. You can cover a lot of your finger surface area here. The bumpers also have the same texture as the triggers, which has this little extra grip on here, which is nice. Bumpers are a little bit raised above the area where the triggers are, so sometimes if you're sliding your finger over, it can give you this little bump here, which helps you kind of determine where the bumper is. Clicking the bumpers is very similar to a stock controller, so the only real advantage here you have is that extra grip, but they are what they are. However, these trigger stops are very, very awesome. Simply just pressing it will enable the clutch system to lock the trigger into place, and you're actually losing about 90% of the pull here, which is fantastic. A lot of third-party Pro controllers will give you approximately 60 to 70% reduction in the pull, which is decent. It's definitely better than having 100% of the pull, but going to 90 is quite a substantial leap. It's really going to make pressing this a lot faster. You can just rapidly shoot out those plasma pistols, which is what you want to see here. Really like these trigger stops. The only trigger stops I think that actually compete with this are probably the ones on the Xbox Elite Series 2, because those are also close to 90% stoppage, but those controllers are usually 2 to 3 times the price of this one. Moving on to some other extras that are included with the controller, one thing that really stood out to me was that it actually includes a license that's built into the hardware for Dolby Atmos. Dolby Atmos is going to give you superior sound quality, but it's usually something that you have to pay a subscription for, so having it included with the controller is fantastic. As soon as the controller is plugged in, the Xbox will recognize that you have the license for Dolby Atmos. You just download the app on the App Store and you're good to go. You can select Dolby Atmos and get that superior sound. The software is also really good, as it allows you to map all of the buttons to any other button. So usually with Pro controllers, you can map these extra buttons to whatever you'd like, but you can't really change the mapping of the face buttons or the D-pad or the standard buttons that are there, whereas in this software you can. One thing I do want to check in on as well is the dual core messaging that was on the box in the beginning. The dual core is basically why they're able to make the claim that this is the fastest Xbox controller, and they are technically correct there, I guess, because what they're referring to is the pull rate on the controller. The standard Xbox controller that you get out of the box with your console is going to be running at 125 hertz or have an 8 milliseconds pull rate, and that is kind of the standard. That's where the base is, I guess. This controller on the Xbox is actually going to have a 250 hertz pull rate or a 4 millisecond response time, which is obviously a lot faster, but other controllers also do the same. The Razer Wolverine, for example, also has a 250 hertz, 4 millisecond response time. However, if you plug this into a PC and you run the Victrix gaming software, you can actually overclock this controller, which I know sounds a little strange, but you can overclock this controller to run at 500 hertz, 2 milliseconds response time. So that will make it the fastest Xbox controller technically, but you can't actually get those speeds on an Xbox. It's actually capped at 250 hertz, 4 milliseconds when you have it plugged into an Xbox. So that may or may not be something that you really care about, but it is neat that it is there. And again, it's something that you wouldn't really see on other controllers. It's something that really only matters to the professionals, because when you are a professional and all things are equal, that extra 2 milliseconds could make a big difference between winning and losing. And the controller overall is just a really awesome controller. This is the first outing from Victrix here, and I'm quite impressed with what they're able to do. I really like the design language. The sharp edges here versus the more rounded paddles you typically see are a nice touch. These buttons are very, very good when it's just the one on either side. The trigger stops are best in class by far, and overall it's just a really awesome controller. I definitely would recommend this one, especially if you can get it on sale like I did. I was able to shave a couple bucks off the retail price, so definitely happy about that. Victrix as a company, I hope to see more from them. I know they have a really awesome headset that I'd like to look at some point, but yeah, definitely recommend this controller. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you learned something here, and let me know if you have this controller or if you plan on purchasing it in the future in the comments below. Thanks for tuning into Season Gaming, and I'll talk to you soon.